Welcome back to the Catholic Sprouts podcast, where we know that every day is a feast day. Today is August 21st, so join us for the story, St. Pius X, Come to the Table. The little boy walked along the path barefoot. Every morning, he picked up his shoes at the door of his house and tucked them under his arm. He then walked the long road to school barefoot to save the leather from wearing out. Only when the school came into view did he stop, sit down in the dust, and put them on. Amazingly, that same poor boy would one day become Pope. And one of the first things he did as Pope was to make sure that no child had to wait a single day longer than necessary to receive Jesus in the Holy Eucharist. Welcome back, Sprouts. Today is August 21st, the feast day of St. Pius X, the humble son of a village postman who became Pope and threw open the doors of Holy Communion to every Catholic child on earth. Stay tuned as we follow one boy's extraordinary journey to the chair of Peter. St. Pius X was born in 1835. He grew up in a tiny village in northern Italy. His family was very poor. His father carried the mail on foot from village to village, and his mother sewed to make ends meet. There were 10 children, and there was never very much to go around. But that barefoot boy had something no amount of money could buy. A heart completely in love with Jesus, truly present in the Holy Eucharist. He went to Mass whenever he could. He knelt before the Blessed Sacrament for long hours of quiet prayer. He received Holy Communion as often as his parish allowed, and always felt with a pang in his heart that it wasn't enough. He became a priest, and then a bishop, and then a pope. Through every step of that journey, Pius X carried the same things he had always carried: a rosary, a simple cassock, and a burning love for the Eucharist. As Pope, he looked out at the church and saw something that troubled him. Catholics everywhere were receiving Holy Communion only a few times a year. They were convinced that they needed to be nearly perfect before they could receive Jesus in the Holy Eucharist. And children at the time were made to wait until they were 12, 13, or even 14 years old before they were allowed to receive their first Holy Communion. Pius X thought of Jesus' words, "Let the children come to me and do not stop them." He thought of his own childhood and how the Eucharist had been the greatest treasure of his life from the very beginning. He believed with his whole heart that the Eucharist was not a reward for the perfect. Instead, it is medicine for the weak and the food that we need as we make the journey to heaven. And yet, children were being kept from receiving Jesus. Then the story of Little Nellie reached Pope Pius X. Little Nellie had been born in Ireland in 1903. Her mother died when she was still very little, and her father was a soldier, and he was not able to care for her, so she was placed in the care of the Good Shepherd Sisters in Cork. Little Nellie was joyful. She was a loving little girl. And from the moment she understood that Jesus was truly present in the Holy Eucharist, she was completely captivated by him. She called God Holy God, and she longed for him, longed to receive him in the Holy Eucharist with every breath. Now, little Nellie was very sick, and everyone knew that she did not have long to live. She was only 4 years old, but her hunger for the Eucharist was so evident, so pure, and so completely beyond what anyone could explain that her bishop gave special permission. Little Nellie received Holy Communion for the first time when she was 4. She held Jesus in her heart with a peace and a radiance that left the sisters speechless. Sadly, she died shortly afterward. When Pope Pius X heard the story of little Nellie, he wept. Here was a child who understood better than most adults exactly who Jesus was in the Eucharist. Then in 1910, Pope Pius X issued a decree that allowed children who had reached the age of reason, roughly 7 years old, to receive Holy Communion. Suddenly, the gates were open, and across the Catholic world, children came flooding to the table of the Lord. Now, if you have made your first Holy Communion before the age of 12 or 13, then you have St. Pius X to thank, and Little Nellie, of course. Pope Pius X died in August of 1914. He had always been poor, lived poor, and he died poor, with the heart of a village boy who only ever wanted to be close to Holy God. The story of Pope Pius X teaches us that the Holy Eucharist is not just for the holy. It is the very food that makes us holy, and Jesus longs for every one of us, especially the children, to come close to him. Pope St. Pius X, pray for us. Now, before we go, St. Pius X has a challenge for you. The next time that you receive Holy Communion, take 30 extra seconds to pray and kneel quietly and simply tell Jesus that you love him. After you receive Holy Communion, Jesus now dwells in you. That is how much he loves you, and that is how close he wants to be to you. Well, Sprouts, that's all for today. But come back tomorrow to hear the story of another Catholic hero. Until then, continue to sprout into the incredible creation that God intends you to be.